Hello everyone, and welcome to my show, Journey into an Unknown World. Actually, I've mixed up a lot of things between the show and my actual talks and lectures. I actually felt that I wanted to talk about light. You know, we've been going round and round in circles in the dark for a good 5-10 years or more if you're really looking back and seeing how things have slowly deteriorated around the world. In the overview, I can't say that the deterioration is all negative, because ultimately when something is old, it always has to be replaced with something new. Whether it's old because it's worn out, or whether it's old simply because it's technically out of date, or if it's something that we no longer want to use simply because we've changed our point of view and moved on to different things. Ultimately, we collect materials in our closets and, in case one day it might be worth something in value as an old-fashioned something or other to someone. For example, this desk I've got behind, I'm going to pull over so you can see it a bit more. This is over 100 years old, and when I was a child, I used to pull out this drawer and then pull this down, and it would rest on the drawer, and that's where I did my homework when I was 5 years old, and I did that for quite a while. Yes, it's a bit warped. Yes, it's not considered very old. My mother said, "Oh, it's a very old thing, and throw it away." But I said no, because that is history. So if you're holding on to something that you feel is something that you would like to keep, because one day a child will inherit it and they'll think, "Oh, is that what they did?" I'm coming back to this. See, there's even a little cupboard up here. And at the bottom that you can't see are shelves for books and things. In fact, my parents had it in their apartment for many, many years until it was time to clean out everything, and I shipped it over here to America. And yes, I had to be very careful with it because it's wood, and wood warps in the heat where I live in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. So what is the point of sharing this with you? At that time, it seemed to me that that was my special place where I could sit down and do my homework or draw. And in those days, I used to draw a lot of triangles and shapes that were, I couldn't name them. I didn't know what a triangle was, but I was inspired to draw them. And my mother would say something like, "Wow, you're very talented and creative with paper and pencils and things." But actually I was channeling, and I didn't even know I was channeling, because what do you know at 5 years old about channeling? If you hear someone talking to you in the room, they say, "Go do this," you go do it. Well, it was the same for me in terms of giving messages to people. I would go help them. But here I want to talk about what I saw as a child, and I didn't understand it, because I'm sure there are a lot of mothers with children right now who are psychic, and they're coming up to their parents and telling them all sorts of things. So I thought I'd do a little talk here on the psychic ability from the point of view of a child. And of course, for me, going back to those days, it might be a bit missing here and there, but I'll fill it in with the spirit guides as much as I can, or what I know and experience through my grandchildren and so on through the ages of my life. And when I say ages, there's stages. We go through one event where everything is colored by circumstances, i.e. around a child's consciousness. Another time we might be in another scenario where we're in the local church events, and we are suddenly in that consciousness. So we are adapting morning, noon and night to different things that go on in our life. So imagine you're a child and you don't understand much about the world yet, but you are getting strange things happening to you. So when I go back to sitting at this desk and drawing, I can recreate the visions of my drawings. And when I see them, I had a series of freehand drawings. I didn't use rulers or anything. I didn't really know much about them then. So I was just drawing very carefully with my pencil, trying to make that triangle. And as you can see, I'm not wobbling, I'm just making it. And so that's how my hand was in those days. But I remember something else. I would stick my tongue out on doing it. I don't know why I stuck my tongue out. It didn't help me draw that I know, but maybe it was something that was connected to the brain that I wasn't aware of, where the brain is saying you're doing something, focus, and maybe it's a baby thing that you haven't got, all your teeth. Maybe I lost some of my teeth. I don't remember that, but I know my tongue was sticking out. Now, what would that do for me? Why would that make me remember it right now? What the bottom line is association between that thing I'm seeing behind me. And by the way, my eyes do not see that whole picture. They see the color and the vibration of it. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. At the same time, I would have had associations with what was around that desk in the corner in my mother's home. And so what I see in association with that in the home was a green chair. Well, I'd even forgotten that we had a green sofa chair. It's a kind of spoiled one that Mother got from someone else, I suppose. They didn't have much money in those days. And so I remember that, my father would sit in that green chair and tell me stories. So you see how I'm building associations from that thing behind me to a green chair I'd forgotten about, to my dad sitting in the chair, to hearing a story, and I can remember him acting out the snake, and I wrote about that because I had that memory another way in later time when my dad was doing it with my sister. But I'm actually making an association right now with him sitting in that chair and telling me about Kaa the snake and India. So India was a mystical place to me, where my dad talked about a snake in a basket and a man playing a flute and the snake's coming up like this. And I can suddenly remember that because I'm making association between that piece of furniture behind, the green chair I just recovered, and the story about Kaa the snake. Only it wasn't Kaa the snake. That's my way of saying it from my sister years later when she was there and he was telling the story. And I went from Kaa the snake back to the image that he conjured up in my mind of a basket that was made of reeds, and out of that came a snake and this man blowing a whistle or something, and a white turban on his head. And I remember my dad actually dressing up with a towel, wrapping it around his head. So that's how I understood a turban. So you see, my example here is to say old memories seem to be forgotten, but when you start digging and delving into your memory, you find yourself making associations with other memories. And if you go back through those memories, you can often find some answers as to what happened to you and what was done. Another association I'm going to give you as an example was I was meditating in an apartment that I lived in the Valley, Van Nuys, California, LA. And I was suddenly smelling this awful poop smell. I only had cats at the time, and anyone who has cats and dogs knows that the smell from their secretions are different. So I'm meditating and I'm smelling this poop smell, and I know it's not my cat's, it's a dog smell. And so I went into the dog smell and I began to see my little foot. I had these patterned shoes on, which were from Canada, that my Canadian mother's relatives had sent over for me. I was so thrilled to have them. There was nothing like that in England. And I know I had an outfit too that came with it, little red flowers, red outfit like an apron, but it was a dress, and under that was a white blouse. And I was dressed up for that for my sister's christening. But I was not old enough to remember all that. I know that from pictures where I've seen in black and white that I was standing in that dress. However, the dress itself, I can remember as clear as the day. It was opened up and shown to me. The red was a pillar box red. The flowers on it were pink and leaves green, and the blouse had little trimmings around it. I was so thrilled to have this. It was so different from anything I'd had before. And talking about this in association with this back here, and my dad doing sitting in the green chair and so on, I can also pull back the memory of myself with these smelly shoes of the poop. And so I saw this foot of mine with these patterned shoes on, and there was poop all over my foot. And I felt the emotion of what I didn't know then, but reviled by this poop on my sock and my shoe. And my dad was wiping my foot on grass, get the worst of it off, I guess. And I'm watching that, and the horror of being so horrid. My shoes are ruined, I'm ruined, kind of thing. And then my dad started to talk to me about, you have to watch where you tread. And all of a sudden in this meditation, I was hearing every single word he was saying about looking where I was treading. It was like a rerun of a audio copy. And I lay there in the bed in this trance-like state, listening to every word that my dad had said to me. I was about 48 at the time. And with listening to that and remembering how I felt defiled, there was a great release at that time emotionally from my physical body. And I remember later on getting up, because it was early in the morning when this happened to me, in terms of the smell of the poop. And so I didn't get up. I went through it all, heard my dad talk, fell asleep again, remembered it well, woke up about 8:30, got out of bed, went to the bathroom, and as I did, I realized I felt free. I'd lost a great burden on my shoulders. I was feeling happy and content. And then I remembered that I'd dumped this whole time when my father had been telling me to be careful and watch where I was treading. And with it went all the times I've been so cautious, so careful, out and about, day in, day out, looking where I was treading and walking. And I noticed later that day when I went shopping that I had my head up, not down. I was looking where I was going, not on the ground, at where I was treading. And I had no idea that I'd been watching the ground all my life up until that point. Careful that I wouldn't tread in something or go in the wrong direction or something like that. So I'm telling you that because I want you to understand that the impressions we get through our emotional traumas as children is stuck to us like glue. And because we're so young, the likelihood of pulling back that memory is sort of non-existent really in the average adult who's walking around doing whatever they're doing. They have no idea that they are running these subliminal tapes of fear, pain, anger, guilt and loss relative to the emotional sense of trauma in some way. And of course the trauma could be smells, could be taste, could be something touching you and crawling all over you like an ant. It could be that you're petrified standing in a room with a big dog and you don't remember it, but every time you see a big dog you get this shudder and want to walk away. Even though you may have a big dog in your life, you've overcome it, it doesn't mean you've got rid of the trauma. So what I'm saying here is that I want parents who are listening to this to understand that as marvelous a mother and father as you are, there are going to be times, like with my dad telling me I have to watch where I tread and going on about society and this and that and whatever. He gave me a real big long lecture that lasted about 15 minutes, and for a child that's a long time, and especially when you're horrified at your being covered in poop. How can you forget that? That is a memory that is anatomically by the poop, physically by holding onto my dad's shoulder for support, emotionally the horror of the feeling of the poop, literally threw the sock onto my feet, my foot, and then later, which I didn't mention, when my dad did finally get my sock off, to take me over to a large windmill that I've forgotten about till now, and found a bowl of water and washed my foot. See, that came back. I'd forgotten that. So we have these deep memories and they're all tied into things. Now, if I wanted to take the bucket and the water and work on that, then I would find a whole bunch of associations with water and cleanliness. And of course, we wash our hands many, many times. So I'm wondering now, if I wash my hands and pull up the horror of that defiled self again and again and again. Well, I wasn't consciously aware of it, but emotionally I'm sure I was. And even today, though I've seen a lot of poop, from babies' bottoms to my grandchildren's bottoms to my dogs and cats and whatever, I guess I've got hardened to poop. But does that mean I'm still not horrified by the smell of it? Okay? Because that smell was vile. You know, it was a poop that a dog had been upset tummy, I reckon. I'm talking about vile stuff. If you're listening and you're associating with that, maybe I'm pressing your button and you're feeling horrible right now with this whole picture that I've drawn for you. But I've done that for a reason. I want you to understand that your brain has a billion stories running around in that brain of things where you've been defiled, abused, misused by anything from an animal to ants biting you, to wasps stinging you, to having a teacher yell at you or whatever. It's all been categorized emotionally in your body, in the cells of your body throughout. So when I was standing, holding on my dad's shoulder while he's wiping his leg, think of this position I'm in. Plus I'm looking down and I'm feeling really, really defiled. How many times do I get in this position? Well, unless I'm doing kung fu or something, not very often. But on my way to the ground to pick something up, I could be doing that position. And on the way to the ground to pick something up, i.e. a child's toy, I may suddenly get an emotion that makes me feel, I don't want to do this, but I don't know why. Because I'm not making an association with my grandchildren, I'm not making an association with my own children when I was older. Where was that going? Why was I feeling uneasy, unstable? Well, I'll never know consciously, but subliminally, my brain is marking it as refer to later. And so, of course, when you get something else happen and it feels like a defilement to you, which could be someone yelling and screaming at you, you're categorizing that in with the defilement of the original defilement. I did spend a lot of time working on that pooth scenario, and I did uncover a tremendous amount of belief systems of me feeling I've been put down, abused, misused in some way, or where I had abused or misused myself in some way by volunteering and doing too much and getting into what we call in England hot water. in other words, in trouble. And once I started following this link of the early smell of the poop and knowing it wasn't my animals, and by the way, there was no poop in the cat box, so it definitely was a paranormal smelling psyche thing that I brought up when I woke up from my early sleep. Okay, and that is a twilight time when we can actually come into dreams and things like that. So if you're that kind of person, do write them down. And dreams that are in the morning are always dealing with the old trauma, the old history, and you're trying to dump memories and belief systems that you have in some way gone through something, and it's still affecting you as an adult today. Now, having given you all that example, let's come back to the children today who are psychic like me. And maybe, they're saying they want a certain candy, and you're saying, no, you can't have the candy now or ever because you're going to eat. That's the way the child hears it. I'll never be able to have candy. So when they grow up, they go out into the world buying all the stuff they don't need just because they can and they want to. And of course, it's not necessarily candy. It could be real thing. It could be ice cream, or it could be they go out and buy themselves a new dress. I knew one guy who was so well off, he kept buying new cars, new motorbikes. He had so many. And it was like, why are you buying all these? Well, because I can. And that was a big lesson for me in hearing him say that. Well, time went by and he ended up losing money, and so he had to actually sell them. And that was, in a way, not so bad because it brought him a lot of money back. But he had said to me he'd never sell them. But you see, there comes a time when we have to face our demons, as it were, within us. And we have to let go of these childhood ideas and memories that we've made in association with our life as an adult. So let me give you another example. Being a psychic child, I was taken to my dad's battalion monthly get-togethers. And because my mother's a cripple, my dad took me. My sister was born and she was a baby, so that also made sure Mum stayed home. And so Dad would take me, and because I was a healer child, everyone seemed to know that somehow and pick me up and put me on their laps. I would get really hot. I would know that I would see their auras. They were yucky blues and reds and greens. And after I'd sat there and got hot for a while, they became pearlesque, like mother of pearl. And I knew I could get down. And because they felt better, they would give me a couple of old coppers, and then I would run over to the one-armed bandit, put my couple of coppers in, and spend about 10 minutes playing on there, getting the cherries and stuff in the line. That's about all it did, as I recall. And then I get a few coppers out and run over to Daddy and say, look, I got some winnings, and then somebody else would give me some more. And so I spent a lot of time playing that one-armed bandit. Okay, and in between, as I was running backwards and forwards to get more coppers, people were picking me up, putting me on their lap, and getting healed. So without me even trying to be a healer, I was created to be a healer by these people picking me up. And even today, when I'm doing healing on someone, I still have that memory of those one-armed bandit, going round and round. And in my way today, when I get a vision of that, I'm thinking, is this person going to really let me heal them, or am I going to lose the game and I'm not going to win and they're not going to feel better? Well, of course, over the years, I know damn well that doesn't really work. It doesn't wash. But hear the thought-thinking process. An association, if I'm in Las Vegas, and I'm playing on those machines, I'm having a whale of time, just like I did when I was a little child. And so 2 pence is now $20. And I am totally fulfilled with just losing $20, just the same as I was a child, totally fulfilled with losing the coppers. Sidebar, I'm totally fulfilled when I put someone on the table and I heal them and they get off the table and they say, I don't know what happened, I feel so light, I feel so different. And then with all the counseling and things that follow, they're a different person. They're happy and content. So you see, that silly little machine, one-armed bandit, put in my head, I'm a healer. It wasn't I'm a healer and run and remember the bandit, the one-armed bandit machine. It's the other way around. So I want you to understand that your children are making associations with what they see you doing and what you entice them to do and tell them to do. But they're also looking at the colors around them. That means psychically, we look into, like a child will say, red's my favorite color, and next week it's green's my favorite color, because they're learning colors, but they are seeing colors. Now, if you think of a seeing person, not psychic, just a seeing person, and you put a whole bunch of colored things like at Christmas around, what are they going to see? Red. If you put, if it's Irish week, and you put green around, what they're going to see? Green. So the way the children are exposed to colors these days is giving them a clue into the way they're going to think as an adult. And it's always been that way, but life is fast now. When I was a child, you had plenty of time to mosey through all your crayons and scribble and enjoy yourself all day if necessary. Today, you give a child their crystals, not crystals, their crayons, and they play with them, and maybe 10 minutes, I don't want to draw anymore, I'm bored, I want to do something else, because they've been exposed to so many something else that they want to try as many things as they're exposed to. And of course, the more they touch and feel and hear it and smell it and whatever, the faster their brains are growing. Now, I want you to realize that everyone is psychic. So if you go back to me in the early days of my life when I was 2 years old and hearing spirit, I was like a repeater. I was saying what I heard to the adults. It didn't mean anything to me. So if I went up to someone and I said, Robert said he's happy in the spirit world, okay, what did that mean to me? I didn't know. I didn't know where the spirit world was. Nobody explained it to me. I didn't know who Robert was. All I was doing was knowing by a feeling that I had to go to a person and tell them Robert's okay. And it took a lot of courage to go up to a stranger, because I've been told don't talk to strangers. So to go up to a stranger and tell them this message, and they're telling me go tell them this message, I did it anyway. And then when I saw they were happy, I thought, well, this is what I need to do. I need to tell people what I hear. So it became something I did all the time. It was a learning curve. Now, your children are no different. They're same as me. They're psychic. They're hearing things in their head, and they're going to come up to you and tell you what they hear. And you may well, just like my parents, say, oh, that's interesting. Go and brush your hands or something, brush your teeth or something. That would be a distraction, because they couldn't handle it. They didn't know why I was telling them all these things. And so my mother's favourite line was, you have a vivid imagination. And even when I was an adult and famous in England, my mother would come to the services and listen and watch and say, oh, it's amazing you could do all this. And then within an hour, because she couldn't handle it, she said, of course, you've always had a vivid imagination. So, and I said to her one day when I was about 30, I said, do you really think I'm just saying stuff that's imagination to people? And she looked at me and with a sort of intense look like I'm looking at you, and said, of course not, but I can't handle it because I can't do it. And so I saw her fear. Her fear was there. For all her praying to God and help with her feet and everything else, she was afraid of the unfamiliar, the unknown. And there were a lot of people during that period, somewhere between my 20s and 30s, who were very afraid of a psychic, because we were doing something that nobody else could do. And that was weird, and that was odd, and that was strange. And so it made all the people who were psychic go undercover and not want to say too much. But when you're a child, you just know you've got to do it. You do it because you're told, behave yourself and do what you're told to do. So whether you're hearing a spirit or you're hearing your mum and dad, you will go and do it. So your kids will say to you, for example, why are you driving the car? Let's stay home. Well, listen to them, because it might be that the spirit guide is saying, wait 5 minutes and you'll avoid an accident. Now, you don't know that, and you don't know you'll ever have an accident. The child doesn't know they'll have an accident, but suddenly they're insisting they don't want to go yet. Give it credence. Wait. Say, oh, let's have potty time then, or let's just make sure all your bricks and things are picked up and put away for later. Make an excuse to hold back. I had a time when I was driving, it's in my book, My Life Story, My Journey into the Oneness, where I was driving, taking my kids to the ocean so they could paddle and have a good day. And all of a sudden, one of my spirit guides, Sister Teresa of the day then, told me, pull over. I know enough, I've trusted her enough in those days to know she meant it. So I pulled over and told my children, all go to pee in the bushes. We don't need to go. I said, well, this happens to be a convenient place where you can go pee in the bushes. Nobody's looking. All the cars are going by. Just please do that. More moans and groans. And I had to get fierce, a bit fierce, and say, your younger brothers need to go. The older ones, take the younger ones. So they went to the bushes and I watched them. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, how long am I going to pull this out? So they all come back into the car and said, okay, we're all excited, ready to go to the seaside attitude. And I'm still sitting there. And they're saying, come on, let's go, let's go. And I'm still waiting for Sister Teresa to tell me to go. She didn't say a word. So I sat there another 5 minutes. I said, Mummy's just having a rest, or just thinking about something, what we do when we get there, making excuses, right? So I finally think, okay, it must be safe. I don't know what's wrong. So I start up the car and we drive literally a mile to a roundabout. And there is a car that I was following on its side, and an ambulance. They collided. Had I have been behind that red car, me and my kids would have been in that accident. So I want you to understand that spirit guides will also tell your children, hold up, stay back, wait. And if they're doing a paddy scene, as we call it in England, in other words, crying, yelling or something, give them time to cry and yell and let it wear down, and maybe in that time you've avoided some nasty event. I'll give you another one that is real. Agaveni was a coal mine town, and they had slag piled up high, and it rained and rained and rained for days. I was having nightmares about this black slime coming over me for months, and it was really disturbing my sleep, and I told my mum about it, so I had a witness. When I was about 10, I think it would be, or maybe 11, there was news that there'd been an awful accident. Remember, we didn't all have television, so maybe I was a bit older and thinking about it. Maybe I was 15. I can't remember the dates, and it doesn't matter. You can look it up. Agagaveni slack slide. It's in the news still today, because that slid down over a school where children were under 7 all died. So nobody could save them. You know, slack just keeps moving and moving. And as soon as I saw that on the news, because I remember seeing it on the news, I knew that was the nightmare I'd been having for so long. And there was nothing I could have done about it. I felt so helpless. But there are these things that your children will come running to you and they say, I had a bad dream, like something black coming over me. Don't dismiss it as just a nightmare. Sit with them. Say, I wonder what that meant. It might mean that you might forget your homework, or it might mean that someone else out outside is having a bad day with black stuff on them, we won't know, will we? So let's not worry about it. Let's tuck you up again in bed, or if they're up and about, let's divert the thought onto something positive and pleasant so that they can learn to have the good and the bad side by side. Now, my mother was not able to really do much translating because she was still shocked from the war, and so was my father. So I had to turn to my spirit guides, and my master teachers came in somewhere around 9 years old. Up till then, I was just hearing voices all the time. And they started to teach me, and of course I went through puberty all the time, hearing them and telling me and teaching me about things of life. We have to be aware that these children now born today are far more advanced than I was. They can come up to you and not only tell you there's darkness, they've had a nightmare, but why, when, how, and what for. Now, I will fast forward to me, for example, and say that I see things like the two towers coming down because I was there in 1985. I had a full image of the planes flying around. I asked my husband, are they allowed to fly around? He said no. And I misinterpreted it. And I said, well, maybe that means that Edgar Cayce's flood is happening and they're letting people fly anywhere just to get out. Wrong, wasn't I? Okay. But spirit guides will give you the future way ahead of time. So let's come back to these modern children who are psychic. They are going to tell you when they know something's bad. There was a case of many children coming to their parents and saying they didn't want to go to school on that day when the parents' mothers were all flying over to France for a day's visit back that night. 2 of the children played up so much the mothers stayed home. The rest all went. They never came home. The plane crashed in the Alps. So we need to listen to the children. Okay? Now, what is their psychic ability? The first thing is they may say to you they feel unsteady and unsafe, like the floor's moving, or they may say that their body aches and pains all over, which means they may be picking up someone's had an accident or something. And you've, of course, dismissed illnesses and diseases and things like that, the natural things they would have. They may say that they're having hot and cold sensations up and down their spine. They may say that they can hear strange voices at night. They may say that they have been talking to someone about something and heard a lecture or a talk relative to their age while in the twilight zone of being asleep and awake. They may tell you that they've been out of body, like onto another planet or another place, and they woke up and can remember it all, and they want to tell you. So let them tell you, because even if you think it's a fantasy story, in their world it's real. And if it was a fantasy story, it could be that the things in their dream were symbolic of change, transformation, and you need to be able to say to them, this is a dream that has allowed you to see that things are changing. Don't worry about the dream, but shall we write it down, and then we can see if it happens later. Okay, keeps them content, keeps them active, keeps them, you're not dismissing that what they've had is rubbish. You're saying, I'm working with it, I'm working with you, and I'm helping you. So when they come to you and they vocalize whatever it is, just say to them, really, let's sit down, tell me a little bit more. Well, that's interesting. What do you think? Do you think that really is going to happen? Probably not, eh? What do you think? And they'll tell you straight up front because they're so aware, oh, this is going to happen. And then you could ask them a little bit more, like, what do you think is happening in America? Don't know. Okay, leave it. If they say no, okay, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Ask them slowly without pounding them. And they may end up saying something like, I can't tell you because I can't speak the language. Okay? It's a foreign country. Okay? Let them build as time goes by. And most important, teach them. Clairvoyance is the ability to see images in your head. Clairaudience is the ability to hear voices in your head. Clairsentience is the ability to smell and taste food and drinks. And those might be important. They're giveaways when a child is drinking orange juice as opposed to alcohol. So you want to keep your eyes and ears open about what they're drinking and eating when they're outside of the house. Okay, it's a giveaway when they get older. And so, you might think, well, my child's only 5 and they're not drinking. But I can tell you that one of my sons, unknown to me, I had a little glass of sherry on the coffee table, and unknown to me, he drank that drink, and he was 2 years old. And unknown to me, when he was older, he told me he drank it. And I could only remember saying to my husband at the time, "Did you drink my sherry?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I didn't drink it. Where is it?" And he said, "Well, maybe Neil drank it." And I said, "No, I don't think so. He'd be falling all over the place." Well, 2 hours later, he was sound asleep, drunk. So I remembered it. But I didn't know he remembered it. So when he mentioned it years later, I was like stunned. Okay, so I want you to realize that whatever you're doing with your child, it's important. Don't dismiss what they say. If they say they were seeing fairies down the bottom of the garden, they are seeing fairies, even if it's in their head. I saw many things in my head. And I'm standing looking at a bush, but I'm not seeing the bush with the fairy on it. I'm seeing the bush in my head with the fairy on it. And I remember my other friends coming up to me saying, "Why are you staring at the bush?" And I said, "Well, is that fairy? Is that fairy right there?" And they're all like, Where? We can't see a fairy." And I say, "It's right there," and I'm touching the leaf where it is, because I'm projecting 3D from my brain onto that real bush. So that was a major event for me, where I learned that my friends couldn't see what I was seeing. Okay, and so over the years, as I got older, I learned to see inside my head, so I don't have to see everybody. And when I'm doing psychodermotherapy, psychic dermological therapy, I'm putting my fingertips on a person just like that, and I can pull the energy from that person up through my body into my brain and see inside their body and see what is wrong with their body. Okay? I teach students to do this as well. So, okay, don't think this is a God-given gift. Think this is a natural gift that we have of psychometry. This is energy. We're able to attune to anything that is living and feel its energy. If it's a box and someone has been touching that box all the time, then I can feel that person's energy in that box. And that's another form of psychometry. If someone is dead and be murdered and their clothing is given to me, then I can recreate the scene from the clothes, work with the police, and did actually see and describe the murderer on 2 or 3 occasions in England. I don't do that much these days, it's too depressing. But your children will have that skill. They'll have these skills. I had these skills when I was very young. I would touch something and I'd see something, but of course I had no understanding of what was in the world at that time. So whatever I saw didn't mean much to me. But I can tell you, I was always seeing things in my head. And that's clairvoyance, and your children will be doing that. They'll be telling you what they see in their head. If you're reading a book to them and it's a fairy story, they may suddenly go off book and start telling you about when they saw a fairy. Stop reading and listen to them and hear what they have to say. Okay? So when they're having clairvoyance in their head, it's as real to them as it is looking at a book across a room. You need to give them validation on that it's okay to see these images in their head, and that you're very interested and you would love to hear more about it when they've got time. And have you got time now? Would you like to share with me now? It's okay if you don't, we can do it later. And they, of course, want to tell you right now, because probably half of what they're going to tell you is about you anyway. because their spirit guides are protecting them so that you do the right thing for that child, so they grow up doing the right things for themselves as an adult. So if you're carrying over your history from your mother in your DNA, and let's say you've got abusive stuff from your upbringing and your mother's upbringing, and your mother had abuse, whatever, going back, grandma and so on, you could be in a line of 7 generations or more of women that have been abused. Or if you're a man, you could have been abused as well, because you know how that's come to light in the last few years. But hey, it's not new. It was going on in the time of the Romans. It was going on back in the time of Atlantis. It was always the dark versus the light. Now, if your child comes to you and says, there's horrible things in my room, and I'm getting nasty monsters in my head, then no, they've got an earthbound. What's an earthbound? An earthbound is a human who's died and hasn't gone to heaven. Where is heaven? In the Akashic records. Where is that? The spirit world? Here, right here in this dimension. It's just that we are solid and they are not. So, as a psychic, if there is an earthbound person in this room, your energy changes and you get cold and you feel it. And as they come close to you, get sort of hot or cold chills up and down your spine or in your front. Then ask yourself, how do I feel with this presence that's here? And if you feel sort of relaxed and it's okay and it doesn't bother me, then okay, it's friendly. If you feel animosity and or suddenly get an urge you want to drink, or go stuff ice cream down your face and you don't normally do that, you know you've got an earthbound person who wants some comfort. They want what they had before they died, which would probably be booze and sweets and candy and all the things that a negative person tries to comfort self with while dealing with their trauma. And most people who pass over have had a traumatic death, or they've had a cancerous long thing. It takes a long while to get over. And when spirit guides and family members turn up, say, come with us to heaven, they don't believe it because they think they're still in bed dying. And so the spirit guides can't force them, because the law of karma is you can't invade a space of another at any time. So, if a person thinks that mum is there but mum's not really there and it's an illusion, doesn't matter how much you try and tell them I'm here, they see you as an illusion. So spirits ask mediums to come in for them. And there are wonderful stories I could do, but they're in my book. But this one particularly brought tears to my eyes. Short version, woman came, she'd lost 2 children to a disease that was inherited by father, created by father. And so all the proof was given, but at the end, there was another message. It was, your eldest son does not have this disease, and you should have him tested so you put your mind at peace. She burst into tears. I burst into tears because I knew from the spirit guides that she had been a brave woman her whole life while being married to this man. And both she and her husband were afraid to have the elder one tested in case they found out he was going to die too. Well, that was a special moment. That was a moment where unity came together. Her 2 boys that had passed over, herself, me, and her spirit guides all brought peace to her. And she went home, told her husband, because it was all recorded anyway, so he listened. They then went to the doctor, and sure enough, the eldest boy didn't have it. What did the eldest boy say? Hooray, because he'd been living under this, you might have it, and watching his 2 brothers die. And finally, he was free of that burden. You see, these are kinds of good stuff that can happen, and out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom. And it's up to you to hear that they are being wise in your space, in your company, for a reason. Now, whether it's you're there to help them accept it and live with it and work with it and evolve with it, or whether it's just to help you get through your life and the traumas you're going through, the child is switched on to help you by channeling their spirit guides or your spirit guides to give you some information. So do listen to that information and understand that they are able to channel it, just as I've been channeling this whole reading to you. When I go, that's because that's me again, they've left me for a minute. But when I'm talking verbose and diligently about facts, then that's them in my consciousness speaking to you. So now I'm letting, I was talking with Cornelius before, and that was where I was pointed and focused on what they wanted me to say. But now that I'm just me, it's like, okay, what else do I want to say? I don't know. I didn't write any notes, and I have to think about it, okay? And, I'm looking at the clock, and I've got another 10 minutes to fill. And immediately my mind starts thinking, well, what am I going to say? Because I didn't prep anything. But if I go back and I say to Cornelius, take over again, then he will. So I'm going to do that so you see it actually happening, so that you can understand what your child is doing. Listen to this woman, because she always understands very clearly her direction and purpose. She is a living, walking model of someone that your child could become one day. So if you are interested in helping this world heal, recognize that all these young ones being born today really do need a guiding hand in accepting their psyche. Their psyche is an extension of the brain in the deep subconscious. It's right back here where it allows you to receive the impulses from people like me who turn up and talk to you out of the blue in your mind, and you say to yourself, how did I know that information? Where did it come from? And what am I going to do with it? Now you've seen me and my personality and my character and my tone in the way I talk through this woman who you know as Dr. Margaret. And thank you for listening to me. Okay. So when he does that with me, what's happening is a speed up of my energy into his energy, and then a slowing down of our energy together. But you'll notice how fast he talked. I don't even think that fast. I'm doing, this is me talking now. My voice is me. I'm not deeper or higher or anything. I want you to understand that your children, when they're channeling from their spirit guide, they're going to be talking to you fast, because the brain moves faster than the speed of light. And, and if they cry and get emotional, it's because something they need to get out. It may be an earthbound who is trying to talk. So ask them, what are you feeling? Okay? And then they'll tell you. So, for example, when Cornelius was talking through me, I was feeling very powerful and strong and confident. Okay? I'd lost that, what am I going to say next feeling? Okay? So let them tell you, let your child tell you what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And you'll know pretty quickly if they're positive. If they start being miserable and saying, I'm hungry and I want ice cream, and don't tell them, you've got an earthbound around, and frighten them. Just say, oh, really? How many times have you fancied ice cream today? I don't know. Okay, well, if I give you ice cream, then you'll be happy afterwards, won't you? Yeah, okay. So you give them the ice cream, but while they're sitting at the table, wherever you put with the ice cream, eating it, you put your hand on their head, and you put your hand at the back of them, and you lean them forward a little bit, and you say, I love you a lot. I love you a great deal. Can you feel Mummy's hand on your head and your neck? Well, it's a bit hot, isn't it? Because I'm making you happy right now, and give them a kiss. Who you're really talking to is the earthbound spirit. And who's standing behind that earthbound spirit? Their mum, grandma, someone in their generation who will then take them away from your child, and your child will be eating that ice cream, and finally they'll be saying, chanting their old self again, and you'll know they're free of that earthbound. Why would earthbounds come to children? Because children don't judge. Earthbounds do come to the adults when they're older and they know what they're doing. And it's not unusual that I have to teach the adults how to cope with lost spirits, as we call them as adults, because they're between here and there, so they're lost. And spirit guides bring them to here, because this is the last thing they remember, so that we can then say, from this point, we send you over there. So one of the common questions when you know an adult is psychic and channeling is, what year is it? I just did this with a class that will be up on my website eventually for you to study with. But it takes time to put all these things together. So be patient with me. But let's go back to what I was saying. So I asked the girls to channel a spirit who's, someone who's lost. And spirit guides brought to each of them someone who was lost. And in each case, the pairs, they were working in pairs, the one who was the psychic asking the questions said, what year is it? And we had a mixture between this century and last century. So it was very interesting for them all to watch and listen, and we've got some of this on video as well, but we definitely got it on audio. So this will be up and available when I'm ready to put it up, and that's when I know that I've got a bunch of people who want to do the class. So if you are interested in, as a mum, in developing your psychic ability and would like to enroll in this class that I've just taught, so that you can listen to it in your own time at a minimum fee, not much money, then I will get it up. So I need you to either email me, Dr. Margaret, rvc@gmail.com, or Professor, Prof. Margaret, Margaret, rvc@gmail.com, and let me know you're interested. Or go to my Facebook page, Samaris Education Centre, or my page, Margaret Rogers Van Coops, and leave a message there for me so that I'll know that you want to study with me, okay? So coming back to your child, as they grow up and they get older, you'll learn a lot from them as they share with you what's happening. And at the same time, if you're studying, you'll be able to guide them through the dark side of self. Now, the dark side of self can be something like, I've got a really good friend who's done something bad, like smoking tobacco, and they're only 8 years old, but they're told, don't tell. If you tell, I'll do something disruptive to your toy or something. So here's a child that's being blackmailed. You need to go there. You need to say, I see you're down lately. Something's troubling you. I know you don't want to talk about it, but no, I'm here. That's the first step. The second step is, you're psychic, aren't you? And you know your friend's negative. What's up? You open the door because you're telling them, I got you, I picked you up, so you can share with me. And then they tell you, now, what you're going to do is tell them how to handle it. So what do? They listen, because they've been listening to you explaining how to handle their psychic sense from as soon as they could understand words, because you've been leading them, teaching them. So what you say to them is this: whatever your friend is doing is going to hurt their lungs one day, and you don't want to be the one who has to say, I lost my friend because he smoked. We have to, together, go and tell his mummy, and together we will tell him that we're going to tell his mummy, but we're going to give him a chance to go and tell his mummy himself first. That's being fair. Because if he tells his mum first, then he'll be being honest and he'll learn a lesson. Whereas if he's not told it first, then he's going to be punished, and that could affect you, couldn't it? You don't want him to be punished, do you? So let's find him and tell him that he can go and tell his mum he's smoking before we do. You've got to be honest, you've got to be open, and you've got to give your child an understanding that in the long run, this is the best thing for that boy so that he doesn't die of cancer. Yes, you could stop people dying for cancer if you stop them from doing what they're not supposed to do to hurt their body. They learn this as a young baby, they're never going to hurt themselves. Well, I've run out of time. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me about this, and I hope that you will go to our Facebook pages and to our I'm not prepared like Katie. She always has everything written in front of her. But what I'm trying to say here is, if you really feel you need contact with me, you can either go to Facebook and connect with me there, or email me. I've given you the emails twice. Or you can go and see Katie Kamara on Facebook. She's my partner. And you can find our show, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Katie Speaks. There's about 2 years of shows that we've done for 2 hours. There's my shows from 2010 on soundcloud.com, Dr. Margaret Speaks. There's videos. I just put my name, Margaret Rogers Van Coops, in the search mode in videos on YouTube, and I'll come up and you can choose what you want to watch. I'm all over the place. There's other people who've done videos with me. I've been on other people's shows. So you should find something that is all free for you to learn and study with me and with Katie Kamara. So search her too on Google, and you'll find the things that she's done as well. And hopefully we'll get back to doing the show together when all the different issues and things that have been coming down with us through technical stuff, health stuff, babies and trains and boats and ships and whatever you want to think of, have gotten out of the way. And we are no longer worried about travel. We're no longer worried about COVID. I'm hoping what Spirit told me is come June, we will be much better because of the weather and so on. So until then, be happy, be safe, and do follow me and share whatever you want to share. I appreciate that. Take care. Bye-bye.